My name is Aileen O'Connor, and for exactly 1 year of my life, I lived as someone's wife without ever being truly loved, without ever being truly chosen, and without ever having the right to dream. People who saw me in those days thought I was living a perfect life. They saw me walking out of a luxury house in Dublin, dressed in expensive clothes, sitting in black-tinted cars, attending elite events, and smiling beside a powerful man. They thought I was lucky. They thought I had everything. What they never knew was that every smile was forced, every step was heavy, and every night I went to sleep feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire life. I grew up in a small rented apartment in Cork, near a narrow street where children played football and neighbors knew each other's stories. My father, Patrick O'Connor, worked as an accountant in a private firm, and my mother, Mary, worked part-time at a bakery. We were never rich, but we were happy. Our home was always filled with laughter, tea, and stories. My parents believed in education and independence. They wanted me to study, to build my own future, to never depend on anyone. I was their only daughter, their biggest hope, their pride. I was studying business management at a local university, dreaming of working in a multinational company one day, dreaming of traveling, dreaming of giving my parents a life without worries. Everything changed in my final year. One evening, when I came home from university, I found my father sitting silently at the dining table, staring at his hands as if he had forgotten how to move them. My mother was standing near the sink, pretending to wash dishes that were already clean, her eyes red and swollen. The house felt different that day. Heavy, silent, suffocating. When I asked what had happened, no one answered at first. After a long pause, my father finally spoke in a broken voice and told me that his company had shut down, that hundreds of employees had been fired, and that he was now unemployed at 54 years old, in a market where no one wanted to hire someone his age. From that day onwards, our life started falling apart slowly, painfully, and quietly. Savings disappeared within months. Rent became difficult. Electricity bills piled up. My mother's health started getting worse because of stress. My father searched for work every day and returned disappointed every evening. I started tutoring school children after university, working part-time in cafes, doing anything I could to earn money, but it was never enough. No matter how hard we tried, it felt like we were drowning. One night, while pretending to sleep, I heard my parents whispering in their bedroom. My mother was crying, asking how they would manage next month's rent. My father kept apologizing, blaming himself for everything. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling useless, feeling helpless, feeling like a burden. For the first time in my life, I wished I could disappear so my parents wouldn't have to worry about me anymore. A few days later, my Aunt Bridget Doyle, my mother's older sister, came to visit from Dublin. She was very different from us. She lived in a big house, drove a luxury car, and moved in high society. She always looked confident, powerful, and in control. After observing our situation for a few hours, she called me into the kitchen and closed the door behind us. Her face was serious, almost uncomfortable, as if she was about to say something she herself didn't like. "Aileen," she said slowly, "I know this is strange, but there is a proposal." I looked at her, confused. "Marriage?" I asked. She nodded, then hesitated. "Yes, but not a normal one." My heart started beating faster. She told me about Ryan Fitzgerald, a 33-year-old businessman from Dublin, owner of several real estate and technology companies. He was extremely wealthy, influential, and respected in business circles. His grandfather, who had built the family empire, was seriously ill and wanted to see Ryan married before he died. But Ryan didn't believe in love. He didn't want a real marriage. He didn't want emotional attachment. He wanted a temporary arrangement, a contract marriage for 1 year. After 1 year, both parties would divorce peacefully. In return, he would pay a huge amount of money. Enough to save my family. Enough to change our lives. When my aunt finished speaking, I couldn't breathe. "A contract? Marriage?" I whispered. She held my hands tightly and said, "It's only for a year. You're strong. You can do this. And your family desperately needs help." That night, I didn't sleep. I cried silently into my pillow, questioning myself, questioning life, questioning God. Was I really going to sell my freedom for money? Was I going to give up my dreams for survival? In the morning, my father sat beside me and told me he didn't want this for me, that he would rather suffer than see me trapped. My mother kept crying, saying she would never she would never forgive herself if I sacrificed my happiness for them. But I could see their fear, their helplessness, their desperation, and I made my decision. "I'll do it," I said. 2 weeks later, I met Ryan Fitzgerald at a luxury hotel in Dublin. He was tall, confident, and extremely handsome, but his eyes were cold, distant, and unreadable. He didn't smile. He didn't waste time. He explained everything clearly, like a business deal. No emotions, no expectations, no interference in his personal life. We would live in the same house, appear together in public, attend family events, and behave like a normal married couple in front of others. Privately, we would remain strangers. After 12 months, we would divorce. When he finished speaking, he asked calmly, "Do you agree?" My hands were trembling, but I nodded. We signed the contract that day. On paper, I became his future wife. A month later, our wedding took place in a grand hall in Dublin. It was like a fairy tale from outside. White flowers, crystal lights, expensive dresses, famous guests, media coverage. Everyone believed it was a love marriage. Everyone congratulated me. Everyone envied me. Only I knew the truth. I wasn't marrying a man. I was signing away a year of my life. When I entered Ryan's mansion in Killinay as his wife, he showed me my room. It was beautiful, spacious, and cold, just like him. "This is your room," he said. "Mine is down the hall." We stood there awkwardly. Then he added, "In public, we're husband and wife. In private, we respect boundaries." That was my married life. Two strangers under one roof. Two separate worlds. One dangerous agreement. And I had no idea that this fake marriage would slowly turn into the biggest test of my heart, my dignity, and my strength. When I entered Ryan Fitzgerald's mansion in Killiney as his wife, I told myself again and again that this was temporary, that this was only for 1 year, that I would survive and leave with my dignity and my family's future secured. But no matter how many times I repeated those words in my mind, reality was much harder. Living under the same roof with a man who was legally my husband, but emotionally a stranger, was more painful than I had ever imagined. The house was huge, filled with expensive furniture, glass walls, and silent hallways, yet it felt colder than the small apartment in Cork where I had grown up. There, we had no money, but we had warmth. Here, we had everything except comfort. Ryan followed the contract strictly. He was polite, respectful, and distant. He never raised his voice. He never crossed boundaries, but he also never tried to know me. We ate dinner together only when necessary. We spoke mostly about schedules, events, and appearances. In public, he was the perfect husband, holding my hand, smiling for cameras, praising me in interviews. In private, he was quiet, locked in his study, buried in work, surrounded by secrets. At first, I was grateful for his distance. It made things easier. I didn't have to pretend to love him. I didn't have to explain my feelings. I could live quietly in my room, call my parents every night, and count the days until the year ended. But slowly, without realizing it, I started noticing things about him. The way he stared at old photographs when he thought no one was watching. The way he flinched when someone touched his shoulder suddenly. The way he avoided talking about his past. The way his smile disappeared the moment cameras were gone. Sometimes, late at night, I would hear him walking in the hallway, restless, unable to sleep. Other times, I heard him arguing on the phone in a low, angry voice, using words I didn't understand. He always noticed when I tried to listen and immediately stopped speaking. There was something hidden behind his calm face, something dark,
something painful. One evening, about 3 months into our marriage, Ryan came home late, looking exhausted and disturbed. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his eyes red as if he hadn't slept in days. He didn't greet me. He walked straight past me and locked himself in his study. I felt a strange worry in my chest. Without thinking, I made him tea and knocked on his door. There was no answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Finally, I heard him say in a tired voice, "Go to bed, Aileen." But I couldn't. I left the tea outside his door and went back to my room. That night, I barely slept. Something was wrong. I could feel it. A few days later, while Ryan was away on a business trip to London, I accidentally discovered the first piece of his secret. I was searching for an old document in the study, as he had asked me to send some files to his assistant. While opening drawers, I found a locked wooden box. I didn't plan to open it. I wasn't trying to spy. But beside it lay a small key. I hesitated, then I picked it up. Inside the box were photographs, letters, and newspaper clippings. And they changed everything. There were pictures of a young woman, beautiful, smiling, standing beside Ryan, holding his hand, laughing. They looked deeply in love. In some photos, she was wearing a ring. In others, she was resting her head on his shoulder. They weren't casual pictures. They were intimate, personal, real. I felt my heart sink.
I had never heard of her. There were also newspaper clippings. Business heir's fiancé dies in tragic accident. Fatal crash on M50 claims young woman's life. Ryan Fitzgerald's partner found dead after late-night collision. My hands started shaking. Her name was Clara Bennett. She was his fiancée. Not just a girlfriend, not just a past lover. His future wife. She had died 5 years ago in a car accident. And according to these articles, Ryan had been driving that night. I felt dizzy. I sat down in his chair, staring at those words again and again. My mind couldn't process it. He had never told me. Not once. He had never mentioned her. He had never spoken about being engaged. He had never spoken about loss. Why? When Ryan returned from London, I couldn't look at him the same way. Every time I saw him, I imagined him with Clara. Happy, in love, alive. And then broken, alone, guilty, haunted. For days, I kept quiet. I didn't know if I had the right to ask. I wasn't his real wife. I was just part of a contract. But the secret was eating me alive. One night during dinner, I finally spoke. "Ryan, who is Clara Bennett?" The fork slipped from his hand and fell onto the plate with a loud sound. He froze. Slowly, he looked up at me. His face was pale. "Where did you hear that name?" he asked. "I found the box," I replied honestly. He stood up suddenly. "You had no right to touch my things," he said angrily. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't mean to invade your privacy, but you should have told me." He laughed bitterly. "Told you what?" he said. "That I killed the only woman I ever loved?" My heart stopped. He sat down heavily and buried his face in his hands. "That night," he continued, his voice shaking, "we were arguing. I was angry. I was driving too fast. She told me to slow down. I didn't listen. A truck hit us. She died on the spot. I survived." Tears filled his eyes. I destroyed her life, and mine. For the first time, I saw him cry. Not quietly, not politely. He cried like a broken child. "I promised myself," he said, "I would never love again. Love makes you weak. Love makes you careless. Love kills." That was why he wanted a contract marriage. That was why he kept distance. That was why he never let anyone close. He wasn't cold. He was traumatized. From that night onwards, everything changed. I started seeing Ryan differently. Not as a rich businessman, not as my fake husband, but as a wounded man carrying unbearable guilt. And slowly, without realizing it, I started caring. I started waiting for him at dinner. I started worrying when he was late. I started smiling when he laughed. I started missing him when he traveled. And the most dangerous thing, I started falling in love. But I knew loving him could destroy me because his heart still belonged to a dead woman. And our marriage was still just a deal.
After Ryan told me about Clara, nothing felt the same anymore. The walls of the Kalini mansion, which once only felt cold and empty, now felt heavy, as if they were carrying his memories and pain inside them. Everywhere I walked, I imagined her presence. In the living room where he sometimes sat quietly staring at nothing, I imagined her laughing beside him. In the garden where he drank his morning coffee, I imagined her standing next to him, teasing him. In his study where he worked late at night, I imagined her waiting for him, believing in him, loving him with her whole heart. I was living in a house that still belonged to another woman, even though she was no longer alive. Ryan tried to be normal after that confession, but I could see how broken he still was. Sometimes he would wake up in the middle of the night, breathing heavily, whispering her name in his sleep. Sometimes he would sit in his car for hours before coming inside, as if he was afraid to face his own thoughts. And sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, he would open that wooden box and stare at her pictures like a man begging the past to return. Every time I saw that, something inside me shattered quietly. I realized then that no matter how close I got to him, I would always be second. No matter how kind he was to me, no matter how gently he spoke, no matter how carefully he treated me, his heart was already buried with Clara. I was just living beside the ruins of a love that had once been perfect. The worst part was that he never promised me anything. He never told me he loved me. He never gave me hope. All these feelings were growing inside me silently, without his permission. I was falling alone. One afternoon, while we were attending a charity event in Dublin, something happened that completely broke me. Ryan was talking to investors when a woman walked in. She was tall, confident, and beautiful, wearing a simple blue dress that somehow made her look powerful and gentle at the same time. The moment Ryan saw her, his face changed, his smile disappeared, his body stiffened. She walked straight toward him. "Ryan," she said softly. He whispered her name. "Emily." My heart skipped. Who was Emily? She hugged him, not formally and not politely. She hugged him like someone who had known him deeply, like someone who belonged to him. I stood there beside him like invisible air. He introduced her to everyone, but when he introduced her to me, his voice hesitated. "Aileen, this is Emily Walsh, Clara's sister." My world collapsed. She was Clara's sister. The past had just walked back into our present. From that day onwards, Emily became a regular part of our lives. She worked in a charity organization and often needed Ryan's support. He never refused her. He always answered her calls. He always made time for her. He always listened to her. Sometimes he even canceled plans with me to help her. And I understood why. She was connected to Clara. Being near her made him feel close to the woman he had lost. And I hated myself for feeling jealous. Because how could I compete with a dead woman? How could I compete with guilt and memory? One evening, I overheard a conversation that destroyed whatever strength I had left. Ryan was talking to Emily in the garden. "I still feel responsible," he said, "every day." "Clara loved you," Emily replied. "She never blamed you." "But I blame myself," he whispered. "If she were alive, I would have married her. Not this. Not this. Not me." Those words cut deeper than any knife. I went to my room and cried silently for hours. I pressed my face into my pillow so no one could hear me. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. I had never felt so small, so unwanted, so replaceable in my entire life. That night, I made a decision. I would stop hoping. I would stop dreaming. I would stop loving. I would only complete the contract and leave. No more pain, no more waiting, no more breaking. I started distancing myself. I stopped sitting with him. I stopped asking about his day. I stopped trying to make things warm. I became polite, cold, professional. just like he had been in the beginning. He noticed. One night he asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I smiled painfully. "No, you never did." That was the truth. He never promised me love. I had promised it to myself. A few weeks later, Ryan announced something that shattered me completely. "I'm thinking of starting a foundation in Clara's name," he said at dinner, "with Emily." I nodded quietly. Inside, I was screaming. He was building his future around her memory, and I wasn't part of it. That night, I packed my bags. I wrote him a letter. "I know this marriage is temporary, but my feelings were real. I tried to be strong, but I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of being invisible. I'm leaving before I lose myself completely. Thank you for being kind to me. I hope you find peace." I left before sunrise, without goodbye, without tears in front of him, without looking back. I went to Galway and rented a small apartment near the sea. I started working in a local cafe. I lived quietly, simply, alone. But even there, I missed him. Every sunset reminded me of him. Every song reminded me of him. Every memory haunted me. And he realized too late that he had lost the only woman who loved him without conditions. When I left Killiney without telling Ryan where I was going, I believed I was doing the right thing. I believed that walking away would protect my heart. I believed that distance would erase my feelings. But I was wrong. No matter how far I went, no matter how busy I kept myself in the small cafe near Galway Bay, no matter how many smiles I forced on my face for customers, Ryan never left my mind. He lived in every quiet moment, every lonely night, every tear I wiped away in secret. Meanwhile, back in Dublin, my sudden disappearance shattered Ryan in ways he had never expected. At first, he thought I was just angry. He thought I needed space. He believed I would return after a few days. But when he found my letter and realized I was truly gone, something inside him broke. For the first time in years, he felt afraid. Not of losing money, not of losing reputation, but of losing someone who loved him sincerely. He stopped sleeping. He stopped eating properly. His work suffered. His assistants noticed. His friends worried. The man who once controlled everything in his life was now lost. He tried calling me. My phone was off. He emailed me. No reply. He even went to my parents' home in Cork. They didn't know where I was. Days turned into weeks. Then something unexpected happened. One evening, Emily visited Ryan's office. She looked nervous, restless, and pale. She asked him to close the door. "I need to tell you something," she said. Ryan looked at her confused. "What is it?" She took a deep breath. Her hands were trembling. "It's about Clara," she whispered. Ryan froze. "What about her?" he asked. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "The accident wasn't exactly how you think." His heart started racing. "What do you mean?" She looked away. "That night, Clara wasn't arguing with you," Emily said slowly. "She wasn't angry. She was scared." "Scared of what?" Ryan asked. "Of me," she replied. Ryan stared at her. "I don't understand." Emily began crying. "I was in the car before you," she confessed. "Clara came to meet me. We fought. I accused her of stealing you from me. I told her she was selfish. I told her she was ruining my life." Ryan felt dizzy. "You never told me this," he said. "I was jealous," Emily continued. "I loved you too, not like a sister-in-law, like a woman. I wanted you, and she knew." Ryan's hands clenched. "That night, she left crying," Emily said. "She called me while you were driving. She was shaking. She said she was confused. She said she felt guilty. I told her to talk to you. I told her to sort it out." Emily looked up at him. "I distracted her." Ryan's breathing became heavy. "She was on the phone with me when the accident happened." Silence filled the room. Ryan felt like the ground had disappeared beneath his feet. "All these years," he whispered. "I thought it was my fault." "I let you blame yourself," Emily said, "because I was afraid. If you knew the truth, you would hate me." Tears streamed down her face. I destroyed your life too. Ryan stood up slowly. His whole body was shaking. You mean Clara didn't die because I was careless? She died because I couldn't control my jealousy, Emily replied. For 5 years, Ryan had lived with unbearable guilt. For 5 years, he had punished himself. For 5 years, he had refused love. For 5 years, he had destroyed his own happiness. For something that was never fully his fault. That night, Ryan went home and opened the wooden box for the last time. He looked at Clara's photos with new eyes, not only with pain, but with forgiveness. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't live. The next morning, he made a decision. He would find Aileen, no matter what. He hired private investigators. He searched through bank records. He contacted old friends. He followed every small clue. Finally, after weeks, he found me. Galway. A small cafe near the sea. He drove there immediately. I was wiping tables when I saw him standing at the door. Tired, unshaven, broken. My heart stopped. Aileen, he whispered. I dropped the cloth from my hand. Why are you here? I asked coldly. I know the truth, he said. What truth? About Clara, about my guilt, about my life. We sat by the window. He told me everything. Emily's confession, his realization, his regret, his fear. I destroyed our marriage because I was living in the past, he said, because I was afraid to love again. Tears filled my eyes. I loved you, he continued, and I didn't even realize it until you left. I looked at him silently. Why now? I asked. Because I'm finally free, he replied, and I don't want to lose you. But love is fragile, and trust is harder. I wasn't sure if I could believe him, because sometimes truth comes too late. When Ryan finished telling me everything in that small cafe near Galway Bay, silence fell between us like a heavy curtain. Outside, the waves crashed softly against the shore, as if nature itself was whispering about endings and beginnings. I stared at my hands, unable to look at him. My heart was screaming, but my mind was exhausted. For months I had cried alone. For months I had learned how to survive without him. And now he was sitting in front of me, asking for another chance, carrying the truth that had arrived too late. I'm sorry, he whispered again, for ignoring you, for hurting you, for making you feel invisible. You deserved better. I wanted to be strong. I wanted to tell him that it was over. I wanted to protect myself. But my heart betrayed me. Tears rolled down my cheeks without permission. Do you know how lonely I was? I asked softly. Living with you, loving you, and knowing you would never love me back? He lowered his head. I know, he said, and I hate myself for it. He reached across the table and gently held my hand. This time I didn't pull away. I don't want a contract anymore, he continued. I don't want a temporary wife. I want you. For real. For life. Those words shattered my defenses, but fear still lived inside me. What if one day you go back to the past again? I asked. What if I'm never enough? He looked into my eyes. You saved me, he said. You loved me when I was empty. You stayed when I was broken. Clara is my past. You are my future. For the first time, I believed him. Still, I didn't answer immediately. I need time, I said. I'll wait, he replied, as long as it takes. He returned to Dublin. I stayed in Galway. We started talking again slowly, not as husband and wife, not as strangers, but as two wounded people learning to trust again. He called me every night. He visited on weekends. He listened, really listened. He remembered small things, my favorite tea, my fear of storms, my love for old Irish songs. Months passed. Our contract was nearing its end. 1 year was almost complete. On the last day of that contract, Ryan asked me to meet him in Killiney. Nervous, confused, emotional, I returned to that mansion for the first time in months. But it wasn't the same house anymore. The walls were decorated with photos of us, our trips, our smiles, our memories. The garden was full of white flowers. Soft music played in the background. He was standing there in a simple suit. No cameras, no media, no audience, just us. Aileen, he said, walking toward me, 1 year ago I married you for business, for image, for fear. Today I stand in front of you as a man who loves you. He took out a ring. I don't want you because of a contract, he continued. I want you because you are my home. He knelt down. Will you marry me again? Not for a year, for forever? I couldn't speak. I cried, and I laughed. I nodded. Yes, I whispered. He hugged me tightly. I promise, he said. I will never make you feel alone again. We got married again. This time. With love. With family. With truth. With healing. Emily publicly confessed her role in the accident. She stepped away from Ryan's life. She went to therapy. She tried to fix her mistakes. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. Ryan started his foundation, not in Clara's name, not in guilt, but in hope. Together, we helped accident victims and trauma survivors. We built something meaningful. Years later, when I sit by the window of our home, watching our children play in the garden, I sometimes think about the girl I once was. The girl who signed a contract out of desperation. The girl who fell in love alone. The girl who walked away with a broken heart. I want to hug her and tell her, your pain wasn't wasted, it led you here. Our story didn't begin with love. It began with fear, with loss, with lies, but it ended with truth, with courage, with forever, because sometimes a temporary marriage becomes the strongest love story of all.